animals have different kinds of foods and different kinds of places they like to sleep and different shelters that they need. So let's take a look at some of the things that we can do around our own homes to help look after the native wildlife and endangered and threatened animals that we are so lucky to live with in Australia.
Planting native plants and flowers in our gardens is important, as they are food for the insects and the birds and the animals and the humans. I've got a native daisy in my garden. Think about what native animals do you love? And then you could ask the nursery which indigenous trees and plants are homes and food for the animals you want to attract. Remember though, try not to use chemicals such as pesticide and weed killer, as that will kill the insects and run into our waterways and rivers and make the animals very sick. Bird baths are easy to make, and I've put a few rocks in mine so small birds have something to stand on when drinking and bathing. Keep them clean, and if you can, keep them elevated off the ground and away from pets. Flowers are really important for our pollinators like bees, but sometimes there aren't enough flowers, and so that our bees don't go hungry, we can make bee feeders. You might want to pause the video here. You'll need a hammer and a nail, a recycled jar with a lid, an old bowl, some pebbles, and sugar and water. So to make our bee feeder, I've got a jar from the kitchen, a recycled jar, old jam jar, a couple of flowers for decoration to attract the bees. I'm going to put the bee feeder in an area of the garden where I don't have any flowers. The spring flowers are just starting to come out. I've got 1 cup of sugar, any type of sugar will do, half a cup of water. So however much water you put in twice as much sugar, double the sugar to make the sugar water for the bees. I've got a bowl and a couple of rocks and some gravel, which will be a spot where the bees can land and sit on and access the sugar water without actually falling in or drowning. And I've got a hammer and a nail or a screw, and that will be to make holes in my jam jar lid. So I'm going to just very carefully make some holes. So we don't always need to feed bees, but because in urban environments we have been taking plants and flowers out and putting in houses and roads and pavements and footpaths, at some times of year, especially in winter and early spring, there's just not enough flowers to feed bees and they can be hungry. So sometimes a bit of sugar water in a feeder helps your local bees. And we, of course, in Melbourne have our indigenous blue banded bee that we are trying to help save. So I'm just pouring my sugar carefully, and a little bit into my jar here. And now for my water. And then I'm going to stir it around until it's all dissolved. Apparently white sugar is better for bees, but I have raw sugar. That was all I had left in the pantry today. Apparently that's fine, as long as it's not honey, because you don't feed other bees honey. It can make them sick. But sugar water is just fine. So that is dissolving nicely there. And while that continues to dissolve, I'm going to gently pour my gravel, and my gravel is just from the footpath outside my house. So you might be able to find some near a park or down along the river. I'm putting the gravel in the bottom of the bowl, and then I'm going to put the lid with the holes. You see all those holes? You can see, oh, the sun's coming through them now. Put that lid on top of my jam jar, screw it on tight, and turn it over. Oh, and you can see it's starting to come out now, the sugar water. And then just leave it there so it slowly dribbles out. And I'm going to put my flowers, just the flowers are there, just to tell bees that hello, this is a good place to come. You'll find some food here. So you don't have to put flowers in, but I'm going to put a couple of flowers around here. Oh, that one fell away. And so here is the bee feeder. And you can see that the sugar water has dribbled out, and you can see that there are rocks for the bees to land on and some flowers to attract them. And you don't have to have a garden to make a beekeeper. I've just got it here on a table with some succulent plants behind it, and let's come back later and see if the bees have enjoyed it. A lot of our food depends on pollinators to grow, but insects need logs and leaves and bushy dark areas, and we often tidy these areas away out of our gardens and green spaces. So let's make an insect hotel, and our very own blue-banded bee especially likes clay, so if you have some clay you can use that too. You'll need mum or dad to help you with this because it does involve some drilling. So it might be a really good one to do for over the weekend. But what you need is some drilled wood, rotting logs, twig sticks and stems, bamboo canes, dried grass, rolled up cardboard, and you can collect those from your local spaces. You need a piece of wood, a drill, some screws, and some old nursery pots. And then you can screw the pots into the wood, and you can fill up the pots really tightly with all of the twigs and sticks and rotting logs and dried grass that you found, and then you can put them all together and hang them somewhere nice and warm, like on a north-facing fence or wall. I've also linked a PDF with 30 amazing insects that live in Melbourne. I wonder if you've spotted some of these in your garden. So I'd like to know, what native animals do you love? Is it an insect, a bird, a possum, or a lizard? I'd love it if you posted it, send us a photo, or tell us about it online. See you next time.